Chloe said you walked out mid-shift again yesterday. This is your final warning, Elena. One more time, and you're out of here. The words dropped cold and flat, like a blade laid across stainless steel. The stark white glare of the fluorescent lights reflected off Marcus Thorne's immaculate tie, glinting like a strip of ice. His expensive cologne didn't belong in this kitchen, where oil vapor, lemon cleanser, and a pounding heat were the laws of the land. He leaned casually against the counter, chin tilted with quiet arrogance, eyes unblinking. In front of him, Elena Ramirez stood straight-backed, apron faded, her hand gripping a dish rag so tightly her knuckles turned white. The rag twisted once in her hand, then stopped. A flash of raw panic flickered in Elena's eyes, brief, thin, like lightning compressed into silence, then vanished under a mask of detachment. "Yes," she said, her voice roughened by oven heat. One word, no more, no less. No pleading, no defiance. Surrender trimmed as neatly as a clean knife cut. In the corner, at the deep sink, a new dishwasher, Leo, was wrestling with a stack of plates that slid against each other like roof tiles. He looked up just in time to catch Marcus's measuring gaze and the way Elena's eyes retreated into shadow. Leo said nothing. He lowered his head again, his hands moving mechanically, but his eyes quietly recorded everything. The space between a threat and the tight breath of someone being pushed to the edge. Outside, the meatpacking district had just rinsed its face after a thin rain. The Verve sign glowed with a warm honey light. Guests checked in, cards swiped, influencers raised their glasses. Farm to Table was printed on the menu in minimalist font, a promise of purity. But behind the steel door, farm and table were two strangers at opposite ends of a rope, and the join between them, people like Elena, was where the rope burned hot enough to spark. The kitchen door swung open. Chloe Ashford walked in, 30 minutes late, moving on the schedule of her own private planet. Hair in a high bun, makeup flawless, white blouse creased as if it had just come out of the box. She passed Elena without looking, a cool minty perfume trailing in her wake. "Where's my coffee?" Chloe tossed over her shoulder, aimed at no one in particular, because here, no one in particular meant anyone beneath her on the invisible ladder. Then she leaned in, flashing a radiant smile at the cluster of waitstaff fumbling for the dinner shift. "God, I have to cover for Elena again. I'll burn out," she murmured just loud enough for several ears to catch. Leo heard it. Elena heard it. Marcus surely heard it too, because the edge of his eye stretched into a thin filament of satisfaction. Elena turned back to the cutting board, the thin blade in her hand as natural as breath. She controlled the rhythm of the cuts like a conductor. Onions, kale, each stroke as precise and unrelenting as a metronome. Tears welled, not from sadness. Onions. The sharp sting crept into her sinuses, mercifully masking everything else that needed hiding. At the sink, Leo changed out the water, steam curling up like mist. He slid his old, cracked phone into his shirt pocket. Every so often, he glanced over. Marcus scrolling through emails with a smirk, Chloe adjusting a jade-faced watch before setting her hand on her hip like a stamp of ownership. Elena bending to pick up a dropped cloth, revealing a fresh burn on her arm, oval and dark red like an unripe plum. In the relentless rhythm of the kitchen, there came a brief lull when the order bell went quiet. The exhaust fan's steady hiss, the faint flicker of the lights. In that exact stillness, if it were you, what would you say? Would you stand up and fight back, or swallow the silence to keep your job and your family afloat? The question needed no spoken answer. The kitchen had already replied in the language of knives, dishes, and heartbeats. The shift rolled on. A server rushed in to whisper something to Chloe about Table 8, two well-known food bloggers. Chloe nodded like a director setting a scene. Marcus came to stand beside her, pointing to two dishes on the menu, his voice smooth. "Let's push the celery soup." Chloe's brilliant idea. Meanwhile, Elena had already strained the broth, skimming the foam so delicately it was almost invisible. She switched tasting spoons, bit half, discarded it, switched again. No one praised her. No one needed to. She was the engine hidden inside the chassis. The car only needed to keep moving. The break was as short as half a cigarette. Leo brought over 2 paper cups, not coffee but tea. He set them down on the stainless steel table across from Elena. What happened the other day wasn't fair, he said softly. The sound was like a small stone skipping across water, sending out a thin ripple. Elena glanced at him, her dark brown eyes flecked with amber. My mother, she needs me. I can't lose this job. The words, needs me, were heavy as lead. She didn't apologize or elaborate, just rested her hand on the paper cup, feeling the warmth seep through skin, through the invisible cracks that had built up over the years. Leo nodded, asked nothing more. He simply filed it away, a detail, a weight, a reason. In the frayed notebook in his back pocket, edges worn smooth, were lines of scattered notes. Clock in, clock out, who arrived late, who smiled, who stayed silent. They weren't courtroom evidence. They were the moral map of this kitchen. By closing, Verve had dimmed its lights. In the dining room, candles waned, upturned glasses made a soft ting like sealing the day in a box. The last guest left, the glass door shut, and the door chime sighed. In the kitchen, only running water and the ring of cloth remained. Elena stood alone at the sink by the pastry station, wiping each tray as if erasing a trace. Leo stayed, though no one told him to. He lifted the tray from her hands and set on the rack for her. A small gesture, wordless. You should be careful, Leo said, eyes flicking to the plum-shaped burn on her arm. Elena shrugged, a smile that never reached her mouth. Used to it. The words weren't pride. They were a thin, patched armor. She opened her locker, a gray metal box, bottom corner flaking rust red-brown. Inside, between a box of bandages and a cheap bottle of ibuprofen, was a small photo taped with clear packing tape. An older woman lying in a hospital bed, silver hair tousled, eyes gentle as a sliver of moonlight. Elena touched the photo with the tip of her finger, a quick touch, like touching fire, then shut the door. The gesture held both all the love and all the fear words could never contain. Leo saw it all. He didn't ask, who is she? He knew enough. He took the heaviest trash bag, tied it, and rolled it away, the wheels hissing over tile in a quiet mark of respect. Outside, Manhattan inhaled the night. The emergency stairwell light blinked pale green, like the weak pulse of a heart working overtime. Marcus had left 10 minutes earlier, his cologne still hanging in the air like a suspended note. Chloe posted her end-of-day story, a half-smile, captioned another night, another win. #Verve, #cheflife. With no trace of sweat or scratches from the kitchen. Elena turned off the tap. She looked at her hands, fine cuts crisscrossing, old and new calluses, faded burns. They told the story her mouth didn't. She switched off the prep station light, leaving only the safety lamp. Leo stood in the doorway, holding the steel door so it wouldn't clang shut. See you tomorrow, he said, his voice neutral, like an appointment with the job. Elena nodded. Tomorrow. The kitchen door closed with a soft click, like a period at the end of a sentence. The night swallowed Verve, leaving one question hanging in the darkness of the service hallway. A question only Leo could hear clearly in his head. What is this woman hiding, and how much longer can she endure? Morning in a meatpacking district always looked like a pre-built film set. Produced trucks backing into alleys, wooden crates stamped with farm names, bundles of fresh herbs still beaded with dew. Inside Verve, the kitchen lights snapped on in a single white slash, stripping away every layer of gloss. Leo arrived 30 minutes before his shift. No one noticed. A dishwasher had no timetable. He was a shadow moving between the rush of running water and the clang of metal on metal. In his back pocket was a small brown notebook, the paper edges yellowed. Whenever no one was looking, he scribbled quick, short lines. Chloe, arrived 10:27. Elena, 7:01, prep cutting. Marcus, 8:15, walked through. His handwriting was neat, without flourish. He recorded times, noted the celery soup, and even jotted the number of a table that complained about a late appetizer. On the next page were fragments of dialogue. Cover for Elena again. Company policy. Image is everything. These snippets were like fingerprints of a culture, unseen but clinging to every surface. Elena started early, her hair tied back with an old elastic. She laid trays of greens on the stainless table, touching each bundle like a doctor listening for a patient's heartbeat. Celery snapped with a crisp crack. Carrots shone as if polished. Halved shallots released the scent of warm earth. She tasted the broth, frowned for half a second, and added salt like inserting a missing word at the end of a sentence. No one registered that precision except Leo, who marked a small tick in the margin. In the early break, the kitchen quieted only halfway. Leo placed a cup of tea in front of Elena and sat across from her, keeping just enough distance not to intrude. "Less sugar," he said. "I've noticed you add your own." Elena looked faintly surprised, then nodded. Steam rose, the thick scent of black tea wrapping like a thin blanket around her throat, parched from hours on her feet. About the other day, Leo lowered his voice. It wasn't fair. Elena didn't default to her usual defensive stance. She looked down at the small crack on her finger and spoke like breathing. "My mother, she needs me at the hospital at midday here at night. I can't afford to lose in both places." The sentence carried no tears, only weight. The swing door flew open. Chloe swept in like a gust of mint-scented wind, latte in her left hand, phone in her right. She smiled at the servers, tossed out a casual, "Last night, okay?" and vanished from the main kitchen toward the hallway to the office. Leo caught the staccato of heels, then the click of a door, and Chloe's voice, stripped of public honey. "Dad, I told you." Verve is just a line on the resume. "I need the recommendation letter. Marcus owes me that." A pause. "No, I don't want advice. I want you to call the department chair directly. Cornell needs to hear your name." Her tone was sharp as glass. "Yes, I'll carry a service for the cameras. But make sure my name is on it. No more of this Elena does." Chloe gets in the background. "Public. Clear." Leo stood 10 steps away behind the dry goods shelf. He didn't record. He listened, memorizing. Cornell. Dad calls the department chair. Marcus writes a letter. The chessboard was set. The pawn still stood in the second row. By midday, Verve was packed. A famous food critic, his verdicts read like court rulings, sat at table 4 by the window, looking like a harmless man walking a dog. But everyone in the kitchen knew those eyes could turn into currency. Marcus ceded the spot near the pass to Chloe, whispering like a director. "In a moment, the celery soup will be the highlight. Remember to smile for the camera." Chloe nodded, flicked her wrist, and her rehearsed smile appeared like a mechanical movement. In the back, Elena watched the heat like a pulse. She let the broth quiver on the brink, forbidding a single bubble to rise too soon. She lowered the ladle, skimming the thin layer of fat like dust off a priceless painting. Pale green soup flowed smoothly into the bowl, topped with a few sprigs of dill painted on like brush strokes. Chloe carried the tray to the pass. Marcus nodded and clapped her shoulder in front of the lens. The camera glided in, smooth as a cat, framing the Verve logo on Chloe's jacket, stopping at her smile. No lens turned toward the back kitchen, where a hand swapped out a tasting spoon for the last time before retreating into shadow. Service ended. Table 4 ordered espresso. The air dropped a notch. By afternoon, the verdict appeared online. Marcus gathered everyone, holding up an iPad like a decree. The bold creativity of young talent Chloe Ashford, a gentle touch on vegetables true to the farm-to-table spirit. Chloe smiled just enough. Marcus applauded, patted shoulders, patting the reflection of his own reputation in his superior's eyes. In the corner, Elena washed the soup pot that had reached perfection. The sound of water against steel drowned out all applause. Leo didn't clap. He looked into the mirror of the kitchen, the stainless steel reflecting the laughing faces, and saw another room. A public hospital, gray neon lights, a green plastic chair, an older woman with silver hair, gentle as moonlight on the photo, taped inside a locker. He turned away, kept working. But the page his mind had turned. Verge, verdict, credit misattributed. The lines connected into a closed loop. By early evening, between shifts, The kitchen emptied for a rare few minutes. Leo was taking out the trash in the employee locker area. The bag was heavy, smelling of damp paper and medical gauze mixed with cheap detergent. As he pulled it up, a folded sheet of paper slipped out, sliding into the gap between the locker and the wall. Leo knelt, reached in, and pulled it free. The paper was crumpled, one corner blurred with moisture. At the top was the logo of a private clinic in Brooklyn. The lines were dense with medical terminology, angiography, pre-op labs, and at the bottom was a number that would make even a healthy heart skip a beat. In the margin, in black ballpoint, were notes in Spanish. Metformina, mañana 1, noche 1, no sal, control presion, lamer si, fiber. The characters danced like music he'd never learned, but the meaning was clear. Medication, blood pressure, call the doctor if fever. In the upper corner, a faint name, Ramirez, ink blurred like old tears. Leo rose slowly. He glanced around. No one there. The hallway held only the periodic tick of the emergency light. He took out his phone, snapped 2 quick shots, one full, one zoomed on the number. Not to count money, but to nail down the truth. This was no longer about shifts. This was about survival. He slid the paper back exactly where it had fallen, pushing it into the gap as if no one had touched it. Respect. Guarding someone else's secret like the last ration of oxygen in a sealed room. When he looked up through the small window into the kitchen, he saw Elena checking the evening orders, her hand resting on the cold metal counter as if needing it to cool what was burning inside. Chloe passed by, had bent over her phone, laughing with someone on the other end. Yes, the review named me. Marcus will send the letter this week. Cornell will approve. Her voice was light as wind on the Brooklyn Bridge, while her foot pressed on an invisible wire leading straight to a sickbed in a working-class neighborhood. Leo tied the trash bag, grabbed the handle, and pulled. He passed through the kitchen, glanced at the wall clock, the second hand dragging across the heart. The words in his mind shortened, sharpened. Truth has a structure, and this one is tilting. He set his notebook on the shelf, opened to a new page, and wrote exactly 3 lines. Chloe, arrived 10:27, call to father/Cornell. Elena, hospital/bill/Spanish notes. Marcus, performing image. Below, an arrow pointed to tomorrow, because from this moment, he was no longer just observing. He was sketching the blueprint of an earthquake. And Verve, beautiful, lit, glittering, was standing right on the fault line. The news came on a Monday morning, like a drill bit cutting through the already taut air at Verve. Marcus walked into the kitchen with the stride of a man about to deliver something that would make the whole room tilt toward him. Holding an iPad, he flicked it awake, his voice pitched just loud enough for everyone to hear. Hayes Hospitality Group has just announced a new program, the Founders Grant. A substantial award for an outstanding employee to pursue education or resolve a family crisis. And Marcus paused, his eyes sweeping the kitchen as if casting a roll. I will be nominating Chloe. There was no cheer, only the sound of knives hitting cutting boards, spoons stirring pots, and the invisible skip of a heartbeat in Elena's chest. She stood at the prep station, still slicing dill, the sharp green oils cutting through her sinuses. Marcus continued, smooth as if reading from a script. Chloe embodies the spirit of Verve, a natural leader, an inspiration to us all. The critic last week confirmed that talent. I'll attach the review to my email to the executive board. Leo, standing at the sink, ducked his head so the running water could mask the faint chuckle from a few staff members. But he heard every word, every emphasis Marcus laid down. Natural leader. Inspiration. Words polished to a shine. But he knew they were hollow as sun-bleached shells. When the kitchen thinned out, Leo approached Marcus, keeping his tone even. I think you should consider Elena. She's the one who keeps everything running smoothly here. Marcus gave a short, dismissive laugh, the kind of laugh from a man whose decision was made long before. Leo, listen. In this business, image is everything. Elena's a good worker bee, but she doesn't have it. No magnetism, no ambition. Chloe is the future. She is the brand. The phrase "image is everything" dropped like a thin blade, severing any chance of argument. Leo didn't push. He simply pinned the words in his memory as an anchor point of the truth. That afternoon, Elena's phone buzzed while she was breaking down chicken. The cracked corner of the screen showed the name of a hospital. She pressed it to her ear, listened for a few seconds, then stepped back as if a cold wave had shoved her. She set down the knife, wiped her hands on her apron, and hurried into the hallway. Leo, nearby, heard her voice tremble in Spanish. A few words he recognized: complication, urgent, cirugía. When she returned, her eyes were red, and he knew the news wasn't just bad. It was an ultimatum. Elena went straight to Marcus's office. The door was only partly closed, so Leo could hear. "Marcus, I need an advance on my pay. My mother, she needs surgery immediately. I'll pay back every cent." Marcus's voice was flat. "Company policy doesn't allow it, and your record isn't exactly spotless." The last sentence was drawn out, pressing on every weak spot. Chloe, leaning against the interior doorframe, looked at Elena with an expression halfway between pity and satisfaction. "Oh no, Elena, that's awful. Wish I could help," she said, syrupy sweet, but the glint in her eyes betrayed a sharper pleasure. Elena stayed silent, turned away. At that moment, Leo knew she had hit bottom. After the evening shift, he quietly followed her outside. A fine mist was falling, streetlights turning into halos of gold. Elena walked quickly through several blocks to a small pawn shop. The glass reflected her, wet hair, apron shoved in her bag, one hand gripping the gold chain at her neck. Leo stayed back, half a block away. He saw her place the chain on the counter. The shop owner gave it a cursory look, then slid over a bundle of wrinkled bills. She took it, nodded, and stepped out. Passing under the streetlight, the pendant was gone. Only a pale gap remained on her skin. She pulled her collar up, walking slower now, as if the weight had shifted from her neck to her shoulders. Leo watched, the feeling in his chest not pity, but a slow-burning anger, the kind he had learned to bank until the right moment. The next day, an announcement for the founder's grant ceremony was posted on the staff bulletin board. There would be a live stream, cameras, and high-profile guests. The stage would be set right in Verve's main dining room. Everyone understood. This would be Chloe's coronation. That night, Leo didn't go home. In his small apartment, he sat at his laptop, the desk lamp casting light over papers and photos arranged in clusters. Timesheets, Marcus's emails, medical bills, snapshots of Chloe arriving late, video of Elena running the entire line shorthanded. He stitched them together into a single file. On the screen, each segment cut away the glossy paint of Verve like a blade. Chloe laughing as she arrived late. Elena is adjusting a dish for a VIP guest. Marcus is standing beside Chloe for the camera, accepting praise for someone else's work. The medical bill with its a crushing total. Leo saved the file into a folder labeled Verve Truth. He leaned back in his chair, eyes closed. The storm had formed. All that was left was to let it break at the exact right time. Verve's main dining room glowed like a miniature Broadway stage. Edison bulbs hung low, casting warm gold over glittering crystal glasses. A small podium stood at the center, draped in crisp white cloth, backed by a large LED screen rolling to the founder's grant logo. Guests in tailored suits and sleek cocktail dresses drifted past, the sound of leather soles blending with champagne being poured into flutes. Marcus Thorne stood on the podium, wearing a shadow-patterned suit and a burgundy tie, his smile tailored as precisely as his jacket. Below him, Chloe Ashford sat in the front row, deep blue dress hugging her frame, her hair in a flawless high bun. She looked every inch the star of a televised award ceremony, and that was exactly how Marcus wanted it. At the back of the room, near the bar, Leo was still in his dishwashing uniform. White shirt slightly frayed, black apron marked with faint water spots. He stood still, hands clasped behind him, eyes sweeping the room slowly, like an unblinking camera. Marcus began his speech, voice warm and resonant as though narrating an inspiring tale. We are here today to honor the spirit of verve, creativity, leadership, and dedication. And no one embodies that more than Chloe Ashford. The cameras panned to Chloe, who smiled and dipped her head modestly as though humbly accepting the honor. In the kitchen, Elena was busy chopping herbs for the evening shift, completely unaware of the performance unfolding outside. Marcus continued, Chloe has not only brought fresh ideas, but she has also been a source of motivation for the whole team. Today, we award her the Founder's Grant to continue that journey. He lifted the oversized check, turning toward Chloe when, Stop! The voice rang out from the back of the room. Clear. Steady. Every head turned. Leo stepped out of the shadows near the bar, walking toward the stage with measured, confident steps. Marcus froze, his smile locking in place. Leo, what are you doing here? Marcus asked, his tone edged with irritation but forced into politeness for the cameras. Leo stepped onto the stage without looking at him, taking the microphone from his hand. My name is Leo, he said, voice even but weighted. For the past month, I've been your dishwasher. And I've seen who arrives early, who leaves late, who keeps this kitchen running, and who takes credit for someone else's work. He turned toward the LED screen. Please watch. The screen flickered. First clip, Elena in the kitchen before dawn, prepping ingredients, wiping sweat from her forehead. Next, Chloe walking in late, scrolling her phone, laughing. A timesheet appeared, the hours not matching. Then footage of Elena running the entire line short-staffed, adjusting each plate to perfection. And finally, the massive medical bill with the name Ramirez in the corner. A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. Chloe's face drained of color, her eyes darting toward Marcus. Leo looked straight at Marcus. And my real name is Liam Hayes. A wave of shock rolled across the room. Some guests whispered, recognizing the name. CEO of Hayes Hospitality Group. Marcus went rigid, his lips moving without sound. Marcus, Liam said, voice low but sharp as a blade. You are not a leader. You are a man who rewards deceit and punishes dedication. You're fired. Effective immediately. Cameras swung toward Marcus, his face ashen. Liam turned to Chloe. Ms. Ashford, your internship is over, and I will be sending a full report of your misconduct to Cornell, along with your father. Chloe's mouth opened, but no words came. The air in the room thickened. Then Liam set the microphone down and turned away from the podium. He didn't look back. He pushed through the kitchen doors. Elena stood there, knife in hand, eyes wide, silent tears falling onto the cutting board. Liam spoke her name, his voice now softened. Elena. From the dining room came the sound of applause, hesitant at first, then stronger, building until it pounded like a rainstorm. It wasn't just approval. It was the exhale of people who had been forced into silence for far too long. Verve, after the storm, felt like a stage with the curtain just dropped. The noise, the clinking glasses, the camera shutters, all gone, leaving behind a silence so deep you could hear the slow rotation of the ventilation fans. The scent of champagne and guests' perfumes still lingered, but now it was nothing more than the remnants of a party already past. Marcus and Chloe had been escorted out by security. No one spoke loudly, no one laughed. Staff left in small groups, as if afraid to break the stillness, or perhaps wanting to preserve the memory of a moment that almost never came. The rare moment when justice, fleeting though it was, truly appeared. In the staff break room, Elena sat in a corner, her apron neatly folded beside her. She had no idea where to begin with everything that had just happened. Liam walked in. No apron now, no trace of the quiet Leo who had lingered in the shadows of the kitchen. He sat across from her, placing 2 white envelopes on the stainless steel table between them. This, he said, pushing the first envelope toward her, is for your mother's surgery. Everything is arranged. She'll have the best team looking after her. Elena stared at the envelope, her eyes caught between belief and doubt. Her throat was so dry she couldn't form the words to thank him. And this, he pushed the second envelope forward, is the Founder's Grant. It's not just for school, unless that's what you want. It's for building your future, instead of just surviving day to day. She placed her hand on the envelope, then drew it back. Why? Her voice was quiet, but it drilled straight into the center. Liam leaned back slightly, his gaze drifting to the small window behind her, where Manhattan skyline cut an uneven silhouette. Because my mother used to be invisible. She worked 2 jobs, sewing by day, cleaning offices by night, so I could go to school. I made a promise that people like her, like you, wouldn't have to be invisible anymore. The silence between them now was no longer the silence of fear, but of recognition. Not pity, but equal empathy. Elena didn't open the envelope. She stood, picked up her apron, and tied it around her waist. The kitchen was hers now, not because someone handed it to her, but because she had kept it alive through the hardest months. Liam stood as well. He didn't say, "I'm making you manager." He simply gave a small smile as he passed. "Dinner service starts at 5. I trust you know what to do." He left, the swing door trembling lightly like the aftershock of a heartbeat. Elena stood alone. The kitchen lights reflected off the stainless steel table like a freshly polished mirror. She drew in a deep breath, and for the first time in what felt like forever, it carried no scent of fear. She looked around, everything familiar, but now carrying a new weight. Then she began, knife, board, ingredients. Not to survive anymore. To begin. In a world where the spotlight so often falls on those who know how to perform, there are still people who quietly keep the whole machine running, their names unknown. Elena had stood in the dark for years, until someone saw her and chose to bring her into the light. Have you ever met someone like Elena? Someone who carries the weight without complaint, without asking for recognition, just to protect what matters most to them. If this story touched you, like and share, spread it. And don't forget to subscribe to Toch Story so you don't miss the stories that might make you see the world through different eyes. Because sometimes justice just needs one person brave enough to say, "Stop."